Hi, I am Narsingh Saxena, a scientist turned management consultant and now a scholar of Vedic philosophy. Welcome to my channel Life and the Vedas. In today's talk session, I will continue further on our topic, Unraveling Life's Mysteries through Vedas. As mentioned earlier, it is explained through 7 articles. Today, I am going to talk about the 4th article in the series titled The Law of Karma. If you are new to the term Veda, these are ancient texts that belong to the classical era of India. They provide a wealth of knowledge about life and explain its various aspects. My explanation of the law of karma is based on what has been covered in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, Bhagavata Purana, and Bhagavad Gita. As we know that the universe operates on the law of causation, which states that for every effect there is a cause. All phenomena in nature are governed by this law. As an illustration, when we sow a seed in the soil, a plant grows out of it. The plant, which is the effect, will not grow without sowing of the seed, which is the cause. When this law applies to humans, it is called the law of karma. In simpler terms, the law implies that every action has a corresponding reaction or consequence. Our action and its consequences together constitute what is known as karma. The law of karma states that a good action or dharma results in generating virtue or punya, which produces happiness or sukha. A bad action or adharma results in sin or pap, producing unhappiness or dukkha. Thus, good actions lead to positive outcomes, while bad actions lead to negative consequences. For example, if we are kind and caring, believe in helping others, give charity to the needy and poor, we will get happiness in this and in subsequent lives. On the other hand, if we intimidate and bully people, harm them, appropriate their possessions, we will suffer and face hardships in future. These karmas are witnessed by the part of Brahm that resides in our body as a witness, and a record of these karmas is stored in our subconscious mind. So, whatever we do stays with us and we cannot escape it. The universe functions according to this law, and justice is administered to everyone. So, if bad things happen to us, it is a consequence of our own past bad actions done either in this life or in our previous lives. We reap what we sow. Why would Brahm randomly give happiness and misery to people? Here you may ask, do we have more than one life? The answer, according to the Vedas, is yes. We have several lives. Vedas tell us that after we die, our soul, wrapped in our invisible astral or subtle body, moves to another physical body being formed in a pregnant mother's womb in the 4th month for its next life, along with our accumulated good and bad karmas. I will tell you about the astral body in my next article where I talk about our visible and invisible bodies. This cycle of birth and death goes on. In between, we may also go to a superior realm called Swarga, which could be translated as heaven, to enjoy rewards of some of our good actions, and sometimes to an inferior realm known as Narak or hell, to suffer the punishment of some gruesome actions done by us in the past. We go to these places in our astral body for a certain period of time, but come back to earth after expiry of that time to take birth in another physical body. According to Vedas, we do not stay in heaven or hell forever. The question then arises, is the soul trapped in the cycle of life and death forever? What is the final destination of the soul? Vedas provide answers to these questions by describing the complete journey of a soul as follows. At the time of the creation of the universe, innumerable individual souls get separated from the Supreme Soul or Brahm and get a physical body through his illusory power of Maya. Maya deludes each into believing that it belongs to the physical body, and it identifies itself as the human whose body it is in. These humans take actions based on their understanding of the various situations that arise in their lives, generating some good and some bad karmas. This mix determines the next birth, in which again good and bad karmas are generated. This journey of birth, death, and rebirth goes on, during which our karmas mostly keep improving, resulting in subsequent better lives, since in each birth its awareness increases, its knowledge increases, and the range of our worldly experiences broadens. This also expands the horizons of our consciousness. The journey gets completed when all the karmas, good and bad, are eliminated and our consciousness becomes at par with the cosmic consciousness. At this point, after our soul's realization of the supreme truth, when our physical body dies, the soul gets liberated and merges with the Supreme Soul or Brahm, which is the final destination of every soul's spiritual journey. Karmas thus play a pivotal role in our lives, since, as seen above, the liberation of our soul depends on the consummation of all the karmas accumulated by us in our various lives. Apart from that, they also influence so many other areas of our lives. Our nature and qualities are determined by what kind of mix of good and bad karmas we have generated in the past lives. If good karmas are more, then our nature will have some virtuous qualities like purity, helpfulness, etc., which denote sattvic guna, coupled with some notable qualities such as passion, dynamism, which represent rajasic gunas, with no baser qualities like wickedness and inaction, etc., which represent tamasic gunas. On the other hand, if bad karmas are more, then the opposite will hold. Even what kind of life we will have depends on this mix of our accumulated good and bad karmas. If good karmas outnumber bad karmas, then we will have a predominantly good life, and if the opposite is true, then our life will be loaded with problems. Here, one thing should be kept in mind, that each karma has a separate consequence. Good and bad karmas don't cancel each other. We cannot escape the consequences of our actions, and so it is sensible to exercise caution before we act. According to Vedas, good karmas include truthfulness, trustworthiness, non-stealing, helping others, especially those in distress, giving charities, showing compassion, not taking anybody else's money, never torturing anybody either physically or mentally, talking pleasantly, dependability, taking care of elders, etc. Among the bad karmas are killing, deceitfulness, lying, torturing others physically or mentally, talking hurtfully, dishonesty, stealing, taking other people's money or belongings, non-dependability, refusing to help the needy and elderly, etc. Karmas can be classified in three categories. The first category is called accumulated or sanchit karmas of our previous lives which are not used up. Our personality depends on how our actions have been in the past. Our mental composition, inclinations, tendencies and behavior are determined by the subtle impressions or sanskaras generated by these karmas. The second category involves those karmas that have been earmarked to be consumed in our present life. These karmas determine our present life. They define what we call our luck or destiny, also known as our prarabdha or bhagya. These karmas have been picked out of our past accumulated karmas. Bad karmas in this mix give us pain, sufferings and hardships, while good karmas give us good fortune, joy and accomplishments. To give you an analogy of these two categories, consider an archer. Sanchit or accumulated karmas are like arrows in the case that will be shot later, whereas prarabdha karmas are like arrows that have been shot. These karmas are ready for reaping. Nobody can avoid them. These are consumed only when we experience the consequences that resulted from them. The third category of karmas include those karmas that we are doing at present. These are called kriyaman or agami karmas, meaning karmas for the future. We will face their consequences in the future and in future lives. While effects of prarabdha karmas are more or less inescapable, there are certain practices like serving others through social service, appealing to Brahm for easing the pain through prayers or mantras, taking medicines for the diseases, practicing techniques of yoga and meditation, etc., that can ease the severity of bad karmas. Here, however, we should keep two things in mind. First, these methods mostly take some time to produce results, and so a consistent use of these methods is recommended. Secondly, Only certain types of prarabdha karmas can be diminished or in rare cases erased. Others cannot be mitigated and must be faced. The law of karma is not to be confused with a fatalistic view of life wherein people believe that whatever has to happen is predestined and they do not have any free will to act. That is not true. When prarabdha influences our life adversely, we can always fight back and make efforts to improve things. We are not required to surrender to adversities and suffer passively. We can take misfortune as a challenge and rise up to the occasion to find the way forward. Secondly, in bad times, important life lessons should be learned for future good. Next, we can take recourse to remedial actions discussed above. And lastly, realizing the adverse consequences of bad karmas, we can make a conscious effort to take charge of our future karmas. For that, we can make a genuine and conscious effort to reform our habits through care and discretion, so that we develop a tendency to perform good actions as far as possible, which will ensure a good life for us in the future. This will require moving from vice to virtue, that is, from tamasic or baser qualities to rajasic or normal human qualities, and eventually to sattvic or noble qualities, so that our karmas keep improving and become less punishing and more rewarding in the coming times, thus reducing our pain, suffering and miseries, and ensuring a better, happier, and more fulfilling life for ourselves. Good karmas not only ensure better future life for us, but also make us virtuous and a spiritually advanced person. It is a great step forward. However, even this is not the goal, since even a good karma also generates a reaction and cannot help us in getting out of the karmic cycle, which is necessary for the liberation of the soul. Let us see how we can get out of the karmic cycle and become karma-free. For that, we have to understand that the reason why we have to face the consequences of our karmas is that there is an ownership of the karma and an associated expectation of outcome. We must relinquish both, the ownership of karmas as well as the desire for a return. Then our karma will become nishkama karma, meaning desireless or selfless karma, which will not bind us. Then onwards, we do not generate the binding karmas, and once our accumulated karmas are consumed, we become free from the karmic bondage. Now the million-dollar question is, how can we get rid of the ownership of karma? The answer is by considering our actions as our contribution to the grand design of the Supreme Being, which He has created for the smooth running of this great universe. In the ultimate analysis, it is Brahm who is the doer of everything. We merely act in accordance with our nature in response to the circumstances in which we are placed by our past karmas. We thus merely do our bit like a puppet controlled by Him in implementing His grand design, since we could not do differently in that circumstance unless we had a different nature. Thus, He is the real doer. So, if we perform our action without the ownership and instead dedicate it to His wish, then that karma will not bind us. And since we are part of that design, why should we expect a return? For example, suppose there is an accident and we happen to be there, and above all, we have a helping nature. So we will automatically help the injured person and take him to hospital. In reality, it was Brahm who helped the injured person through us. We were simply executing His wish, since we would not have acted differently unless we had an unhelpful nature. So why should we have an expectation for return? But what if we perform an action whose outcome is expected? Like, for example, interviewing for a job which we desperately want. Why shouldn't we expect a positive outcome? The answer is that we will be extremely disappointed if we don't get it. This disappointment will not be there if we leave the outcome to His wish. Since then, it may be construed that according to His grand design, He wanted us to do something different. We should adopt this approach in our day-to-day work by changing our mindset. The ownership of the action has to go. Brahm is the actual doer. We have to do a karma dedicating it and its outcome to His wish. Such karmas then become nishkama karma, which does not bind us. Then our actions don't generate karma. It may seem challenging, but we should try to make it our eventual goal. Only then can we be free from the bondage of karma, paving the way for our soul to move out of the unending cycle of life and death and be liberated eventually when our past accumulated karmas are exhausted. That's all for today. In the next episode, I will be talking about our visible and invisible bodies. Thanks for listening.